There's 5 things that I learned from Brighton Marathon 2021 that I need to make sure that I nail in 2 weeks' time at the Manchester Marathon. Hopefully you'll find some useful tips to apply to your next race in week 12 of marathon training. But first, let me just go through the plan for this week. It's the first of 3 taper weeks. Despite having done 4 marathon training blocks, this will be my first proper taper, which means, apart from race day itself, the hard work has been done. So now it's about getting to that start line in as recovered, refreshed state that I possibly can, whilst balancing not losing any fitness. So the way that I'm going to do that is drop down the mileage this week. After 100 kilometers last week, I'm going to drop to 75 this week, starting off with 12 kilometers that I'm on right now. I'll do another couple of 13 kilometers, throw in a 16 kilometers, and then the long run this week is just going to be 24 kilometers. And I still intend to put in some race pace blocks in that long run, along with keeping in a threshold session still for this week. All right, all done. That was a 12.5 kilometers hilly run in the rain and the wind today. It was 5:24 average pace and an average heart rate of 136, and the elevation gain was about 170 meters. Only negative to that is I can just feel that left glute again. It's by no means a pain, it just wants to remind me that it's still there, but it's also a reminder that you mustn't forget your strength, so I'm going to do that right now. At Brighton 2021, I had a sub 3 hours 30 minute goal, and I ended up coming away with a 3 hours 36. And what I realised soon afterwards, my goal was too aggressive. Marathons are really hard at the best of times, but I had this short training block due to injury, plus it ended up being a super warm day, and I didn't factor those 2 things in enough. For this time, I'm going to be setting what feels like a more reasonable time, the goal of a sub 3 hours 15 marathon that I think is achievable, but I will have a more challenging goal in mind. Hopefully not too greedy, and in all honesty, I will not even entertain that goal unless 2 things happen. 1, conditions are good on the day, and 2, I'm feeling good after the first few kilometres. Right, that's a Wednesday, 13.6 kilometres done at 5:36 average pace. So nice and super easy. Average heart rate of 129. Legs feeling a little tired today, did some strength training last night, maybe still tired from the long run at the weekend. Proper pacing is something else I need to get right, because most people positive split the marathon. I certainly did. Very few actually negative split the marathon, and I think equal splits would be an excellent result. Now, thinking about the marathon in 2 equal half marathons, I think those individual splits are too big. I would much prefer to break it down into 3 or 4 splits, not necessarily equal splits, and then have different target times, different target paces for those splits. Now, I'm leaning towards doing it in 3 splits of about the first 21 kilometres, the next 10 kilometres, and then the final 10 kilometres. Aiming to run the first 21 kilometres slower than race pace, the next 10 kilometres at race pace, and then see what I've got left in that final 10. I've come across the Marco marathon pacing method of basically 3 times 14 kilometres, again speeding up in each of those segments. Or I know some just split it up into the first 20 miles and then the final 10 kilometres. But whatever you do, the worst thing you can do is go out too fast. You won't know you've gone out too fast until it's too late. I remember thinking at the halfway point at Brighton that it was starting to feel quite hard, and indeed, when I looked at my heart rate, I was just getting to that threshold point, which was far too early, and it led to trouble. So this time, I want to make sure I get to the halfway point still feeling good. 11.2 kilometres done at 5:26 average pace, and the heart rate was a bit on the high side, 141. The legs just feeling a little bit tired still. Maybe it's from the strength training, maybe it's from the big mileage week last week. Getting carbs in you is so important, and with carb fueling, this is the one thing I probably did okay at Brighton. I managed to cram in 5 gels. It wasn't pretty, but now I've found a gel that sits much better with me, so I should be okay with that. And then these gels I've got are carb only, so I'm going to need to replenish electrolytes, which are the salts that get lost through sweating. I'm going with salt tablets this time, and I'm going to make sure I take one at every water station, along with the water. Now, the situation with water at Manchester Manchester is water bottles, so I should find that a much better experience this time. I ended up cramping up at about 35 kilometres at Brighton, and that was likely to be as a result of lack of electrolytes and not hydrating enough. With it being a hot day, compounded by the fact that I wasn't getting on with the paper cups, and so I wasn't hydrating properly. And then the final lesson I've learnt is that, yes, you are racing the course. Sometimes that doesn't always go to plan, so don't be afraid to trust your GPS watch. After all, this is what you've trained with for weeks and weeks. So I get that around tall buildings, the GPS can be all over the place. So in this situation, I'm just going to manually lap at every mile marker. However, for the majority of the course, the watch is going to provide you with pacing that is consistent with what you've been training with. Because in the event that the mile markers are spaced out incorrectly, inconsistently, or they end up being longer than anticipated, then it is okay to rely on your watch. Now, this is because in Brighton, there was a bit of a fiasco where the course measured 568 metres too long because the cone for a turnaround point was put too far up the road, but nobody knew this at the time, and that was somewhere between mile 9 and 10. But it wasn't until mile 12 that I realised something wasn't right, as I was suddenly 2 minutes behind where I wanted to be at that point. Yet my watch was indicating that I was running faster than I needed to. The 3:30 pacers, who I was just about keeping up with, decided they were going to race the course, so they sped up into the distance. There's even this funny picture of me doing the maths, counting it on my fingers, just trying to work out what is going on. The bottom line is, if something doesn't add up with the course markers, then I'm not going to be afraid to rely on the pace reported to me by my GPS watch, as that is what I've trained with for the last 14 weeks. So there you have it, 5 lessons learnt the hard way of what I'll be looking to get right at the Manchester Marathon.
So it's Friday, I'm going to try a threshold session today. 4 by 1 mile, I'm going to go for with say a 2-minute recovery at threshold pace. I'll try and go for say 4-minute kilometres, 6-minute 26 miles that'll be. I'll put in 1600 metres into the watch, so maybe even a few seconds less. 3k warm up, 3k cool down should get me 13-14 kilometres in for the afternoon. Let's give it a go. Alright, that's 13.6 kilometres done at 4:55 average pace and a 1:45 average heart rate. So that was 4 by 1 mile, a threshold repeat, and the splits were 6:23 for the first, then 6:23, then 6:20, then 6:26 for the last one. Ended up being the slowest. Only because I just wanted to keep the heart rate at, 170 max, and the legs are still feeling a little bit tired.
Well, that's no use. Bit of heavy rain we had the other day, and my local path is flooded. Well, I'm just out on an evening stroll now. I've ended up leaving the long run of the week to Sunday evening, looking to get 24 kilometres in now. Now, the trouble is, today's long run, I've not really thought about anywhere as seriously as the other ones. So I haven't really planned to get any marathon pace blocks in there. And the other way I've not planned this very well is I ended up having half my dinner before the run, and then I'm going to have the other half of the dinner after the run. And even though I gave myself an hour and a half, I do not feel like doing marathon pace blocks today. So I think I'm going to bail. I'm already 9 kilometres into this. Actually, no. I know it sounds like I'm just making this up on the spot, which I am, but I'm going to do 8k at marathon pace. So let's see. So I'll do 15 easy, 8 at marathon, 1 easy. Yeah, let's do that.
Alright, back home, that was 23 kilometres done in the end and just 6k at marathon pace. So it was 5:28 average pace and a 1:36 average heart rate. Legs are still feeling tired, to be honest. And I just had my regular Hoka Cliftons on today, which is my regular easy running shoe. I can't help but wonder, is 24k even necessary for me at this stage at my level? But we'll find out. So as for the week, that ended up being 73.9 kilometres. The Tanda Race Predictor has me down for a 3 hours 16:44 marathon. The net heart rate efficiency has gone down a little bit, 1.382 meters per beat. And the Garmin Race Predictor has me down for a 3:11:48. If you got this far, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.